Anyway, I've been listening to this wonderful album this morning, and anyone out there that hasn't bought this, I would encourage them to do so. I will put a purchasing link just below this video. So my first question for you is, how do you chart this band's musical evolution from Experience to the Blue Forest? That's a hell of a question, isn't it?
Well,
covers 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think the influences are pretty much the same because, you know, the musical taste maybe was kind of sealed with all the Rainbows and all the Led Zeppelins and all the Yeses and Queens and all that stuff. But then
but lots of contemporary stuff that comes, you know, all the time, of course, like make its effect. So yeah, the basics are there, but in 20 years it would be sad not to change and not to have new kind of inspirational, I don't know.
Oh, I mean, I listened to this album and your last album. I could be wrong, but it sounds to me if you're becoming more symphonic, more progressive than back in the beginning. Would you say that was a fair comment or not?
Maybe it's a fair comment, I would say. It's the thing is like, I guess that kind of epicness has always been there in our music, but we are kind of like maybe not afraid to show it in a way that if that's kind of like where the song is leading you to, you're just like kind of serving the vision and the song by making it as it's supposed to be and not kind of like keeping it in reins, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And
so I remember seeing you, as I said earlier, at the HRH Prague Festival. I wasn't sure how to take what I was hearing, really. It sounded so very different to what was on the bill. But listening to your, I think, are you exploring more concepts now than perhaps you used to before?
I mean, initially this album wasn't really supposed to be conceptual in a way. You know, it was only like kind of when we decided that, okay, these are the songs that we're going to work on. We had plenty of songs, obviously, but then when we chose the songs that these kind of like go together well and they gel, at least in some parts, they gel well, you know, then that conceptual feeling maybe that we like, you know, the idea of creating something great as the Pink Floyd had the Walls and Yes had their Close to the Edge, you know, it's kind of like something that we always admired when we were kids, right? Then maybe, or, you know, ELP with their pictures at an exhibition, you know, so there's a theme and then you kind of like try to create that. But then again, I have to say that, you know, being three songwriters in the album, in the band, and every album has songs from all the three of us, so that's kind of like also maybe one of the main reasons why the music on the albums of the von Hertzen brothers are so, they're kind of like so, you know, in their spectrum they are wide and they reach to that direction and also that direction, and there's a lot of like, because three guys are creating almost, I would say, like everybody's trying to create good songs, and then whatever then, you know, in that moment feels like, right, okay, we're gonna work on these songs and these are going to be the next album, then depending on that it kind of like varies a bit then that what kind of music, you know, we put out.
It goes a little bit back and forth also, like if we have done like an album with simpler stuff, like for example New Day Rising or even the Nine Lives were pretty like not that symphonic, not that progressive.
Yeah.
So then we feel free to kind of, you know, give the progressive, you know, side in turn like a chance. And then when we have done that, we always like when the previous album is that, then we start to kind of try to make an, you know, the other way around, turn the thing. So I would say we go both like more maybe symphonic and progressive, but at the same time we go more minimalistic and so we always try to kind of avoid the thing we did like on the last album. So that kind of the movement is kind of, you know,
It's like a
Okay.
pendulum almost, you know.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well,
you know, when we go really prog, and then we feel like, okay, we just did like 3 10-minute songs, so let's go a little bit to the other side. But at the same time, like on this, because it became in the end like a double album, you know, at the same time there are really simple songs on this album as well, like Söderskär, which is a song that Kia sang on the album, or the last song, which is Disappear. They're actually quite simple, small songs, but they somehow like ended up having a little bit of symphonic elements in them. And the arrangement of those songs kind of like was born because of the context of the theme album, you know, so that they could have been even more simple, but then because of the album, you know, they became, you know, it just felt right to arrange them a little bit more like, you know, wide and with violins and with the horns and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
one
it's
thing. Yeah, sorry. That's one thing, like, which is like different from the previous album, from War Is Over, that on this album we used a lot of like instruments. We wanted to have like live musicians, like friends, a lot on the album, whereas the previous one there was none whatsoever. So that we did just by ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, it all makes for a fascinating mix with this album. I mean, the Blue Forest has actually been described as a combination of music, art, nature, and conservation. Would you say that was correct?
Yeah.
I mean, is conservation a big theme for you, and certainly in terms of this album?
Yeah, and especially Jonne has written 3 major songs on this album. Like he has composed Peace Patrol and Blue Forest and Northern Lights. And Jonne is a kind of, you know, I mean, you can tell yourself, but he really spends a lot of time in nature. So his vision of music is kind of like even more kind of like landscapey, and, you know, somehow fits well into that kind of nature, the topic of talking about nature and forest and the sea and all that stuff. It kind of like is inbuilt in that composition. So when you later on work with the lyrics and try to polish the theme and the concept of the album, it's very easy to kind of like have those, talk about those things that are very close to our hearts, which are like, you know, the disappearance of species and the you know, the cutting down of the forests and stuff like that. So it kind of all came together really, really well on this album, especially because we chose to have like 30 minutes of music written by Jonne, which is very, that has that already inbuilt into those songs. I would say that that's kind of like one of the main reasons also why the Blue Forest kind of thing also started taking shape. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, I don't know. We have the color blue in our mind.
Yeah.
So that was the starting point. Just like
what's the significance of the color blue for you?
Well, the in all it's kind of, you know, simplicity, and you know, we didn't have a blue album yet. So we had done 7 albums, and we just like, hey, we don't have a blue album yet.
Yes, well.
So that was kind of the but then it started kind of as a joke. But then it's the first lyrics Mikko like wrote in the Promise, because I had written a Finnish lyric, and you did the first line of the chorus was "Full moon in the forest blue."
Yeah.
So that was the first kind of, okay, the forest is blue now. Okay. So and from there it kind of started to when you worked on the lyrics.
Yeah.
Everything started to kind of go around that.
Yeah. And then I always felt like, you know, being in nature and having that magical, they call it, at least in Finnish, it's sininen hetki, which means the kind of like the twilight, the
blue hour call.
Blue hour, yeah, the blue hour in the forest, which is kind of like the sun is setting and kind of the nature is calming down, and you have that special moment of like everything is kind of turned into blue hue. So that was kind of like the vision of like this album, because there's so many kind of like composition wise, there are so many like things that remind me of that moment. There's a lot of like depth in the compositions, and when we started, putting lyrics down together with Kia and Jonne. I didn't do the lyrics by myself. We started like trying to describe that moment and the oneness that you feel when you're in that light and in that blue moment, and then it kind of like started coming together. Kia had
the blue color with its kind of it's the color blue. Everybody knows what it means. So so when you cut down the forest, it's pretty, it's blue.
Well, it's funny, I think you said earlier that this wasn't a concept album, but would you say that the loss of harmony between people and nature is a theme on this album?
I think it is, and it just like, I mean, it wasn't conscious like to start with, but then like Kia said, he had already written like a Finnish lyric to the song The Promise. And in that lyric there was the forest was we were in the forest, it was in the forest already. And then when I started like translating it and playing around with words, how to get that initial vision of Kia somehow like translated into English, that thing started forming. And then we had Jonne's Blue Forest song, which was like a double, there was the red alert part, which is the end, and then the blue forest part, which is the beginning of it. It just started kind of clicking, and suddenly I started feeling, and I started talking about, this title that I had in mind, the red alert in the blue forest, and because we have discussed it a lot, that because we love being in nature and we love that why don't we just kind of like bring that to the art. We are kind of living an urban life, but I think that all of us are kind of like seeking that being in the forest and being in nature a lot.
Do you see the blue forest as a kind of a metaphor for some sort of salvation then?
It's a metaphor for everything being all right. And we still have the forest, and we still have those. It's metaphorical in a way that.
But it's sad. Blue, the color blue is sad.
It's also
it's okay,
sad.
But it's like
It's
forest is already knowing that the end is gonna come.
So. There's that, and then there's like, of course, we have our history of having a cabin, with our family for as long as we can remember, since we were small kids, and we always spent all the summers at the cottage and playing in the forests. And those forests were kind of like very familiar to us. And now since they have been cut down, many of those forests have been cut down, it deals with the fact that, we have lost something from our childhood, which was precious. And bringing it here to today and talking about like, what does it mean when we are actually cutting down the forests and losing species all the time, what are we doing, as human beings for all the other living beings on this planet? And so there's a lot of like, just pondering, and maybe that's why the lyric is maybe more like kind of like mature in a way, that we are kind of like bringing into discussion the worry that we have. And not just trying to be cool rock stars, singing our songs, rocking it out. So there's a lot of, we're trying to bring that concern and that like our feelings about how, the world lies and the state of the, of the world. And I think in a way it's kind of like, it might feel like that a rock band shouldn't really do that. Rock band should just rock out and have fun and do that. But I don't know. I guess we can't really change who we are, and we are kind of like being maybe a bit more honest about, our art, and try to be honest in our art about things that are, very, very somehow like important to us.
How much of this album is colored by Finnish folklore and Finnish folk music?
I wouldn't say that much, because as Mikko told you in the beginning, that most of the music we listen to is not Finnish music. So I think the influences, of course, we have some bands here that we have been listening to also, but I think the musical influences comes outside from Finland to us, and
but the song Promise did have exactly that.
yeah.
So that's one of the first songs, and that kind of that came about the exactly about the Finnish mythology and the certain animals and the kind of the ancient kind of relationship between like this. Well, it's about the hunt, isn't it? The lyric, it's about the hunt. So, and the history is like I have our how is it? Our mother's brother is a
Uncle,
nature photographer, and since we were kids, since I was very young, I hung out with him when he was like shooting pictures of deers and stuff. So the Promise is about that kind of the hunting feeling, but not with gun, with camera actually.
Right. Okay.
Try to capture that thing.
Yeah.
I think that that when we sing about forest, it obviously is a Finnish forest. It's not like Amazon or like something like that, because that's where we are and that's where we got those experiences from. So for example, Northern Lights talks about that feeling in the Finnish Lapland when you kind of like witness that beauty, and so it does have very much connection to the Finnish thing. But music-wise, when we talk about compositions, it's not like we are just going like, okay, let's take this harmonica out and the traditional Finnish or Swedish, like certain kinds of violins. The only thing that came like that jouhikko, which I don't even know that if it has a English name, but jouhikko that we used in the song Promise, that's kind of like that points to that direction of the Finnish folklore.
No, that's a traditional.
Yeah, traditional
violin,
like Scandinavian violin. Yeah.
But what about Pirates of Reservoir? That's got an almost sea shanty quality to it. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that one.
Well, actually, that was a song. One of my songs I wrote like being out paddling in the archipelago of Finnish like this. If you go outside from Helsinki, you have this beautiful archipelago all around. Like it's big, really a big thing to have like that much like islets and islands and stuff here on the coast of Finland, southern coast. So I spent maybe like 2 months there, and that's one of the songs I wrote there. And initially the boat theme, the theme was about like a boat, like a phantom boat sailing, like just empty and abandoned, and that being a metaphor to a really old human being, like losing it, not realizing that he's kind of actually losing it already. So that was the starting boat. But then the music itself had this kind of a irony in it. So we tried to kind of not typical for ourselves to play a little bit with the lyrics to make it a little bit like more humoristic maybe. And then came the idea like why not to combine the lyric with the Gloria song from 2011 album Stars Align.
Yeah.
So the boys in the Gloria song are actually now 80 years old brothers. So that's what happened. So it kind of 80 years later, the lyrics of the Raaseborean. And Raaseborean is exactly the place Mikko was talking about. We have our summer cottage inn. So that's if you go outside Helsinki a couple of hours towards west, there's Raasebori, which is a small town.
Okay, I'll come along next summer then.
Yeah.
Bring your boat.
Yeah, I will do.
And of course, we are playing with Pirates of the Caribbean and playing Pirates of the Raaseborean. It's like us playing as kids, but now 80 years later, we don't understand that we are already like ghosts, you know. So
it's a fascinating number. I mean, like there's another one, The Promise. It feels very rustic, quality to it. Lots of traditional instruments, I think. What is it? What exactly is the promise?
You mean the message of the song?
Yeah.
Well, as I said, it's about the hunt actually,
Yeah, hunting,
but it's kind of a it's a. But for me, it tells about the storyteller of the song is about to do something like really not like violent or something like really bad, because he's he's stuck with this his prey girl, whatever, and so he's being kind of a tailing her or whatever and hunting and kind of stalking her, and then there's this moment in which kind of happens like the final ritual. So it's actually quite dark to my.
Yeah, it's like a Nordic noir thing, kind of, almost.
Nordic
It
noir.
all happens at night, and the Finnish lyric that was there before was kind of like very already kind of like really kind of like told the story, and then we just tried to translate it. And there's a full moon in the forest blue, a bug hole with a silver hue, so there's like that already places you at night, into the forest
on a hunt.
Yeah, you're hunting something, and like Kia said, it was more like trying to capture.
Well, that was the initial kind of not the idea of the song, but the initial kind of a experiment which resulted this.
Yeah. I mean, there's a wonderful number on there. I mean, the album's full of wonderful numbers, but this one, All of a Sudden You're Gone, has this very mournful feel to it, and the slide, I think there's a slide guitar on there that it almost feels a bit like Americana, really. I wonder if that's what you were aiming for with this song.
Yeah, I don't know, it all came together. I mean, Kia was writing songs because it was the beginning months of the pandemic, and we were having the songwriting sessions and the time. And we were all kind of in different places, and like Kia said, he used to go with his canoe to the islets and with his guitar. And I think this is one of the songs that was born also like when you were alone somewhere, like out there at the sea, and the melody came. And then I had the idea of like that moment that when you lose something or somebody, it's always so sudden, even though you have prepared yourself to it. But then the final breath or whatever, when you lose it doesn't have to be a person, but if you lose something, it's always very sudden if it's something that has been a very important thing to you. So we tried to kind of like address that, and then it became this. I think also the pandemic had a lot to do with like what the lyric ended up being, because
and our personal lives, like during
lives.
the pandemic, there was a lot of losing and a lot of endings. So in our personal life, so that's about this. That song is about that.
So you get that all in that song, but it's got some lovely slide guitar in there as well. Gives almost a Nashville feel to it. Am I right there, or am I perhaps thinking of a different?
Well, there is so many. For me, that song kind of it's some of the it's kind of a 70s vibe in the composition for me. It I don't know from where, but it kind of brings back some sort of 70s vibe, early 70s vibe. And then also
that slide guitar, I remember how it came about. You had that melody.
I had the melody song, and then
and then you were doing some guitar tracks, and then we had an idea. We were at the cottage, and then Kia was trying out this to play the melody also with the slide, and it sounded good. And then and then
I don't know. Did you mention National, the band?
No, or? Nashville. Nashville.
Nashville. Okay. Yeah. Well, in the ending, I tried to do some banjo-ish guitar playing in the ending part, and so in that way, maybe Nashville also like flavor there.
Okay. I mean, your music, I think we mentioned it earlier, and you talk about this 70s feel. Your music has this grandeur. It reminds me that are Pink Floyd a big influence on you at all?
it was like, and probably, of course, will always be there in the bottom, at the bottom. But when I've last listened to Pink Floyd, so that's like 25 years ago. So I don't listen to it anymore.
listen to Pink Floyd. I think those are the things that, you know, when you're like in your late teenage, like 15 to 20 years old, and the music that you listen to then is like really, really affecting your personality and your, you know, if you have a musical talent, that obviously seeps into your, like, you know, because your individuality, music wise, is kind of forming there. So that's why we have all these, like, you know, the bands that are playing Pink Floyd all over the world, because people want to hear those songs that were so important for them when they were kids, you know. Like, for example, in the UK, when we go there and play our, let's say, a club tour, you know, we can see the posters on the wall saying that, okay, this is like, this and this band is playing the Foo Fighters, this and this band is playing the Rainbow, this and this playing the Queen. So there's a lot of need for people to hear those songs that were important to them. We don't, we felt always like, you know, there's a few bands that were like really, really listened to a lot in our family home, you know, when we were growing up. And one of them was Pink Floyd, and one of them was Rainbow, and then there was
Queen
was there.
But then you mentioned All of Us Under the Gun, so that's actually worth to mention. So there is a part which is like straight from Dire Straits, like this part of the in between part. It's like the Mark Knopfler doing his things, but we just added kind of harmonies there. It was kind of straight like to Mark Knopfler's.
Well,
so there are these moments in which you feel like, okay, this comes from there.
Yeah.
Well, we mentioned earlier. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, when Kia was started to play guitar in his, like, maybe when you were 11 or
10,
11, you know, so obviously the guitar players that were kind of like played at our family home were like David Gilmour and Ritchie Blackmore and Jimmy Page, and, you know, so they were kind of Jeff Beck and Pete Townsend. So those things kind of they just come from that subconscious mind of doing and learning how to play. And then, like, if we have a song that, okay, this is a very kind of Floyd-esque, you know, song. So kind of that Gilmour vibe kicks in, and you start, like, you know, creating a solo or your guitar arrangements from a place where you know that, you know, somehow this fits well here. And it's not that you're copying this great
influence.
It's just like automatic. And I would say that even, like, you know, we listen to a lot Dire Straits and Mark Knopfler's, like, we, you know, when we are on the tour, we know all the guitar parts by heart. So we can sing all the guitar parts, like we can sing all the Stevie Wonder horn sections, you know. So it's just something that you learn so well. And then it's just like, you know, I think that the beauty of these guitar players that kind of like are our main influences is that they all wrote very melodical things, like Brian May, for example. Like, when he wrote his guitar parts, they had such, like, beautiful melodies in them, you know, whereas the shredding thing was never really something that touched us at all, you know, to be fast or to be technically advanced. That was never really a thing to us. It doesn't touch your heart the way, you know, some really cool Brian May, like, solo, or how he harmonized his guitar. That was always for us, like, wow, you know, this is so, like, it somehow, like, goes very deep, you know. And that's why, maybe because it made such an impression to us, you know, those influences are very strong in our music as well.
Well, you mentioned earlier the Close to the Edge album by Yes. Now, Yes obviously uses beautiful block harmonies. I listened to your music. I'm just wondering, is that an influence on you as well?
One of the influences, of course, but all the harmony things, they come from very many different directions, starting from the Beatles.
Okay.
Beatles and the Queen, of course, like ABBA and
Eagles.
yeah, what have you.
Crosby,
You seem to like this very melodic, sort of melodic type music. Whereas,
The harmonies, like that's something like you don't. That's okay, all the bands, but that's something like why not to use it when you have a mouth, you know, like along with the instrument. So it's something. Yeah, it's always felt nice to do some harmonics like above the playing and do things with the harmonics like a little bit interesting things.
Yeah,
That's all the bands mentioned do.
Yeah,
did.
for example, the opening track, Day of Reckoning, you know, when Kia wrote that beginning, the intro of that song, you know, it has a lot of harmonies there.
Yeah.
And so it's even like, you know, when you compose, you know, you already start thinking like, okay, you know, this is like part of the pack, and then something else comes here, and then that takes the lead. And so there's this kind of like dynamic, like Crosby, Stills, Nash had, like when they were doing their big albums, that it's kind of like even the composition is like already thought of as 3 guys or 4 guys singing it, you know?
Yeah.
That's also one approach that we use a lot when we write songs, that, you know, it's like, you know, okay, this is where Jonna is singing the lead, and this is where Mikko is singing the lead on stage. And then we just like, so it's a part of the composition process. It's not something that, okay, we have a melody and then we just add some harmonies to it. That's sometimes the case, but we also use the other method, which is like we actually write already in harmonies.
Sure. I mean, Louder Sound, they describe you as the black sheep of modern rock, a band that is hard to pigeonhole. Does that make you happy or not?
Well,
would you prefer to be easily pigeonholed?
Kind of, you know, it's an advantage, obviously, but then it's of course also a disadvantage in a way that it's, you know, well, this is like going to this, you know, commercial bullshit talking, like we're so hard to sell because, and what are these guys? You can't, you know, is it like you know, this or that? Yeah, so
I think
we feel better having the freedom to do whatever we want, and then, you know, everything else comes after, you know. So if we don't play it like big arenas because of that, so then be it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've one last question for you, and it's a complete stinker, I'll warn you. Which of these albums is the most important in the history of popular music? The Elvis debut or Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band?
I mean,
well, the Elvis thing is kind of misleading because that's kind of the white man doing the black man's thing already. Like Elvis was really.
You say that because
he was the biggest. When I was 7 years old, I dreamt about Elvis. I had my hair like Elvis. The only thing I listened to was Elvis, and he was like the biggest. And I dressed with him with the 50s style. In Finland, we have this kind of magazine, the only, like the biggest magazine. Music magazine Suosikki, whose the editor, the chief editor, was huge 50s fan. So
Elvis fan.
Yeah, so, you know, every other magazine had on its cover had Elvis. So I had my room, you know, covered with the posters of Elvis, and I'm a huge fan. But then only after, of course, you learn that music also came from somewhere else before that.
Do you know James Brown described Elvis Presley as nothing more than a hillbilly that had discovered the blues?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be that nasty.
But it made a huge impact for so many people, and so many people found that kind of rhythm and blues.
And he still is. He's like totally like out of this planet. Like
he was a great performer, and you know, like you can't deny his kingship, or what do you call it? But
what about the cultural impact of Sgt. Pepper, though? Do you think that's important now?
That's different.
Yeah,
I mean, if I had to choose between those two, there would be no question in my mind.
Of course not.
I think we're all like born from Beatles, you know, in a way that, you know, our, you know, the melodies, you know, the melody and the, you know, the variety and all that they were able to present in such a short time is just like you can't compare anything to that. I mean, even Queen, that we love, they have nothing against the Beatles. I mean, really, when it comes to like what they achieve in such a short time, songwriting from that point of view, you know, never mind the hysterics of the first couple of years and all that, but strictly from how good songs they were able to write in such a short period, it's just unparalleled, I would say.
Yeah. Oh, gentlemen, it's been a delightful chatting with you. I wish all the success with this album. I hope you sell loads and loads of them. And as I said, there is a purchasing link just below this video, so you must go out and buy it straight away. Best of luck with your tour. Best of luck with the tour, and hopefully maybe we'll speak again soon.
And when are you gonna release this, Barry? This video?
At this moment, it's getting, what's the time here in the UK?
Okay, we have a little bit of news for you guys. We are not only coming to play the festival in Portugal in February, we are also coming to play London and Manchester on that same trip. So
maybe I could get you to play My Back Garden. That'd be good.
No, dude, you have to get your ass off of that couch and come to see us play Manchester.
I must do it. I've seen you a couple of times. I must come and see you again. And it's certainly if you play London, that's not far from me. But
yeah, it's not far. Yeah, if you're at Cambridge, go to Cambridge.
Yeah, it's in about 20 minutes. I've got to go and collect my children from school.
Okay.
I will get this video processed and uploaded on my channel at 6 p.m. UK time, which will be 8 p.m. your time, I think.
Okay, super. The official announcement about us playing those few other shows in the UK is coming tomorrow, so you'll be the first to tell about it. So.
Right. I'll make sure I put that in the title. People. So, if you could share this on your Facebook page as well, I'd be really happy about that.
Yeah, we're sharing when it's uploaded. We'll share it for sure. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for making great music, and thank you for agreeing to talk to me this afternoon. I wish you the best of luck with your tour, and as I said earlier, I hope we speak again soon. I'll see you in London.
All the best with you, and hi to everybody in the UK over there.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.